gonna ask you guys, has nothing to do with video games. Do you know anything about ice skating? Like the whimsical kind, not like the hockey kind.
Oh, then no.
I saw that movie Blades of Glory back when I worked at a theater. Does that count?
Is that
You also saw I, Tonya.
Oh, that movie's great.
Blades of Glory? Is that like semi-pro of ice skating?
Nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Which
it
is the dodgeball of basketball movies.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. With
Yeah.
everybody's favorite forgotten comedic actor.
Will Ferrell?
No, John Heater. Though I guess Will Ferrell is also kind of...
Napoleon
Will Ferrell's
Dynamite?
not forgotten.
No, he's not. That wasn't at all a slight against
Yeah.
Will Ferrell. I'm just saying he doesn't have the same power. Like now,
Oh, for sure,
Like
yeah.
like he had a couple comedies that came over the last few years that no one saw. Like they did not review well and they did not do well financially. And it's like, man, when a new Will Ferrell movie came out, like you knew about it. Now,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I mean, he still does a lot of active stuff with like Funny or Die and everything. Like he's
Oh, his Funny or Die shit. I just watched, he was in the,
between two ferns.
the Feature First
Yeah.
movie. Yeah, he's like the fake Southern businessman, like kind of like caricature. No, I was just watching ice skating. Figure skating is what it is. Not ice skating, but whimsical. It's called figure skating. It's fucking fascinating how they score that game. Have you ever thought about how they score it?
No.
That's crazy, right? You think
yeah.
it's just like, oh, that's cool.
I'm actually not.
Yeah, well, it's cool shit. I'm watching it, and like guys like skating, all of them skating backwards or sideways, which is already cool. And like does a move, okay, and like lands it, and then the move shows up in the top corner, and then a live like rating of the score, and then it gets added to his score.
Wait,
It's like
they grade them in real time?
time.
So do they start at 10 and it goes down, or do they start at 5 and it goes up?
Depending on how good or bad the move
zero?
is, you can gain or lose points.
Man, that's
Like
whack.
you fuck something up, you lose points. So they have it. It's like apparently there was some. I haven't looked into it enough yet, but trust me, I will know everything about it soon. But apparently,
Next week.
some big thing happened in 2002 where they had to rework the scoring system because some cheating shit. So it's like composite. It's
Cool.
like they actively real-time score you on the execution of your special moves, of which there are rules for how many and when you can do them, by the way. And then once that's done, they give you an overall score on kind of like the ballet of it all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
production, like
They're-
how cool it was. And then they add that together and that's your score. But I thought it was cool that it was like active, like it was live scoring. Like,
well, so it's funny. Like you skate, is scoring similar in?
that's fucking great you
Yeah,
mentioned that
like, that's-
because the guy doesn't
the
move,
performance is
okay,
almost
and it
like-
calls it's like triple toe spin, and I'm like, I wonder what that is. I looked it up, and then it's like he does another spin, and it's like a lux, and I'm like, that looked the same. How is that not a toe thing? Oh, I look it up. It's like skating. It's literally like Tony Hawk, and that's the reason I
that's
brought this
great.
up.
Yeah, the
is because
minutia's like-
depending on which foot you leave and land on, and which direction you spin and start from, it's a different trick in quotations.
Man.
Like if you like spin like with your right shoulder back towards your left shoulder in that way and like
Yeah.
land on a different foot, that's a different trick than starting from your left spinning forward and landing on your other foot. Like
I wonder how
I know,
Yeah,
like I was like, holy shit, it's like skating. It's like there's different
I
moves,
wonder
like
how the
backside, front
judges
side.
can like see those precise movements. So
I
like,
couldn't either. I was trying to
Yeah.
even Google what the difference between these two spin things
hard.
were. Like one's like where you just do your classic, you see the spin and they land and their
Yeah.
leg kind of like flies out. Like that thing is a totally different move like than like just a regular up and spin. But it was just cool how it's literally like skateboarding. It's like Tony Hawk. Like
Yeah.
they do a trick.
That's
and it's
great.
like that looked good. And they rate them on their trick and that's active scoring.
Do they manual out of it and then get a combo going?
It seems like it.
Dude, has there ever been a skating video game?
Yeah,
a figure
probably.
skating game that was.
Oh, I thought you were going to
has to
say,
have been
yeah,
one.
tons of
No,
you idiot.
not a skateboarding game. I mean, like a figure skating video game.
There has to have been.
Yeah.
I never played it, but there
But
has
yeah,
to have
How
been.
come
Seems
EA
cool.
never used all the things that they have for?
Frostbite?
Well, no, I meant for the NHL games.
No,
but then
they
make a
just
figure
they
skating
just made
game
a
out-
battleship golfing game with that engine.
That's because the NHL engine is meant so that you go full speed. Your only way to stop is to slam into other people.
Yeah.
I don't know. This sounds like the best figure skating game ever.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Like
Yeah.
I never so something I've always respected because of the skill and precision. Like
Yeah.
like I have good balance, so ice skating, like I'm not bad at it. Like I can manage.
I can't ice
But
skate.
like
I can't
to
either.
do that shit is already obviously incredible. But like it's cool that there's like a really weird technical and a strategic aspect that's
Yeah.
kind of like you wouldn't know unless you were a fan of
I
the
think
fucking
they come
sport.
up with new moves and stuff like that.
Yeah, the Lux thing I was talking about, that spin is named after a guy who did it first. Like that's what it's named after.
Cool.
It's called
That is straight up skating.
So it's cool. It is literally like skateboarding tricks.
Yeah,
I just thought it was really fucking cool.
The kickflip was first done by Johnny Kickflip.
No, but unfortunately, pretty much every kickflip or flip trick was invented by Rodney Mullen.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
pretty
He's
much
a beast.
Capitalized.
You ever see like people are trying to collect all this old like VHS footage from when he used to like skate around like just like whatever, just like perform, like crowds would gather around him.
Yeah.
There's a tape going around on YouTube of him in Japan. It's just
He's a master, and he's still good. He just,
it's wild.
he was just on a physics girl video a couple months ago. Like they were talking about the physics of the impossible, which is a trick where you wrap the board around your foot. Like, they were just talking about that, and he was on there doing it still at 50+ years old, like still
for
being
him.
very foot technical, which is like
Have you seen the thing with Tony Hawk?
the 50 at 50.
No.
Oh,
So
I
Tony
think
Hawk
that's
is
what
an
it was.
amazing figure to follow on Twitter because he is extremely self-aware and very funny. Like I'm pretty sure his Twitter bio just says video game character. And like that's really funny. But like he recently like tweeted out his phone number. It was like a personal phone number.
I saw that.
And he was just getting in conversations with people about.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, all this,
and he's still skating. He's still going.
absolutely.
Yeah,
All
he's
this
in his kid skates too, Riley.
Yeah, and his one kid is very fucking good and like better than he, at least on the ground, ever was.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
he was always a vert guy. He wasn't. He
and
wasn't a street guy.
competition skater, which is different.
It's all based around that scoring, kind of like I said, figure skating.
But it's very cool.
yeah.
So sorry for my long ass, but look it up.
No, that's fun.
Come Winter
it
Olympics.
automatically makes that shit sound way more badass.
Yeah, come Winter Olympics, it's not going to be just me getting excited about curling anymore. Now I'm in.
Me and Austin did that.
Yeah, I know,
For a
I'm
basketball.
jealous,
It was
I
really
remember.
fun. I liked it.
Curling is really fun.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be watching figure skating scoring.
It's great. It's nice and cool. They give you tons of booze.
That's not how the Olympic version works.
If you're Canadian.
Okay, so Solid Snake from Metal Gear, Commander Shepard from Mass Effect, Joel from The Last of Us, all iconic, memorable game characters brought to life with the sheer power of acting. Whether it be through their voices or motion capture or even FMV, it's pretty inarguable to say at this point that these actors have become just as vital in telling a video game story as their film and television counterparts. But what if those hardworking individuals responsible were to feel so disrespected, so underpaid, and so stressed out that they were to finally hit their limit of what they could take and say that enough was enough? Well, that happened in late 2016 all the way through 2017 when a large group of workers for hire, famous within the industry, took a stand and demanded to unionize. Gaming is still a relatively new medium when it comes to the masses, as well as to organizations like SAG, or the Screen Actors Guild. But with massive multi-billion-dollar companies out there like EA and Activision behind the wheel of some of your favorite titles, these weren't just toys for kids and niche fans anymore. Games have become huge-scale projects that take endless amounts of time and employee power to produce, many even rivaling the budget of major movies these days. Why wouldn't we treat the studios the same way? Turns out changes like this can be incredibly hard sometimes, and today we're about to find out why. This is Hot Button. I'm Randall Beatrice, here with Austin Blakesley.
Yo.
And Chris Anantuano.
At the top, if you don't like me talking about my lefty bullshit politics, then you might as well turn this fucking episode off right now.
We're going to get into that a bit today. So, Austin, care to explain why Chloe sounds so different in Life is Strange Before the Storm?
Spoilers. One correction. They were unionized before this happened.
Really?
I'll get to it, but video
Okay.
game voice actors, some of them have been part of SAG since the 90s.
Yeah. I think it's just more of it became a very loose interpretation of what screen
Yes.
meant in Screen Actors Guild.
So, a little bit of a background. Randy mentioned SAG. In the United States, there were, two unions for actors. SAG, aka the Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA, aka the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists.
Yeah, we went over this in my school.
Now, video game voice actors were actually originally under AFTRA until 2012, when the two unions merged into one, since the one of them was for television and one of them was for film, and a lot of people didn't want to be members of both, and a lot of people do TV and film now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's less of a divide, so the new union that was formed was creatively called SAG-AFTRA.
Yeah. They just stuck a hyphen in there and called it a day.
Yep. Now, SAG-AFTRA as a collective has been around since, like I said, 2012. It has around 165,000 members as of 2016. And as of 2016, 6,000 of those performers had credits in video games somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, if you look it up, a lot of video game voice actors also do tons of animated series, cartoons, anime, a lot of stuff in television.
A lot of them do cartoons.
Phil Lamar was in Pulp Fiction.
Yes.
He was Marvin.
Yep.
He got his head blown off.
Yes.
Yeah, is he all right?
It should also be noted that it is estimated that only 25% of people with voice credits in video games are union. So there's a lot of non-union people being hired for video games.
Yeah.
Probably not stars, I presume. Probably more.
No, sometimes it's like
background
sound.
shit.
It's like sound engineers or just people that work for the company.
And not to get ahead of myself, but that number is slowly going up as we've all at least seen Death Stranding.
Yes.
More and
people
more
are playing it upstairs right now.
more and more Hollywood actors are being offered roles. And this is where the video game industry fucked up. And I'll not to jump ahead of myself,
Yeah.
We'll talk about it later, but
For sure.
this is where the video game, because you could keep hiring non-union people all you want, treating them like shit, but you hire a Hollywood actor, they know they can't be treated like shit.
Yeah.
Now, there is something called the Interactive Media Agreement, which was first made in the early 90s between AFTRA and a collection of video game publishers, which is constantly changing as some of them shut down and new ones come up.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, like, which publishers were...
We'll talk about which ones were there during the strike. I'm not sure which ones were there in the beginning. But AFTRA negotiated their first agreement, known as the Interactive Media Agreement, with these publishers in the early 90s. And this contract sets standard rates for voice actors, and this will be important later, based on a typical 4-hour vocal session.
Yeah, and that's immediately when you said in the 90s. I was
Yeah.
like, what was the capabilities of voice acting in video games in the 90s compared to now?
Yeah.
The demand wasn't even close to fucking
what
being
was the
there.
first game? I think maybe the first time I heard a lot of voice acting in a video game might have been Half-Life.
That's a good
Star
question.
Fox
What was the
64?
first
I don't know.
heavy voice acted game?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I couldn't tell you.
Star Fox 64 a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
I
Half-Life was one
My
of the...
first thought was like, maybe it was an RPG, and I was like, wait, all those old Final Fantasy games were
Yeah, no,
not
that stuff.
acted, you know? It wasn't until later that they picked up on that shit. 10.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 10.
Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Metal Gear Solid had a lot of voice acting.
It did.
The way that this works
Those are well known. Like
is like I
Tetris,
said,
is that like just MIDI stuff, or is that a guy making this noise?
making all the sounds.
so you get paid in what are essentially 4-hour chunks for your time when
And this
you're a
is
video
just
game
flat.
voice actor.
Like
It's flat. No, there's a minimum, and if you are a Nolan North or a Troy Baker or a Laura Bailey or an Ashley Birch, you can negotiate higher rates, I'm sure.
people know who you are.
Yeah, and in 2005, reports say that this was about $759 per 4-hour session. In 2013, that was raised to $825.
I feel like
Somewhere
inflation
between
would have.
800 and 825.
The recession was also between those 2 years.
It was. You can also, if you don't want to pay your actors union rates, you could also hire non-union actors.
Which yeah, like you said, there are probably still plenty of games that do
Oh,
that.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, not to get ahead of myself, but the way it works, as I understand it, is when you make a video game, you negotiate a contract with SAG-AFTRA. And then after that point, then you can go through them to hire SAG-represented actors.
Right.
And you can hire people who are a part of SAG-AFTRA if you don't have a contract with SAG-AFTRA, and you can pay them non-union rates. But there are things about the union, a lot of actors will refuse to take a non-union job.
How much do
Yeah.
you think Charles Martinet is getting paid?
Not enough.
I mean,
That man is a treasure.
I don't know. Maybe I'll wait until we get more into unions, but I was going to ask if either of you have ever worked for a union ever.
No.
Okay.
So what's interesting is that I worked at a theater chain that was in the process of trying to unionize before I left, and then I worked at a major guitar retailer.
Oh, Sam Ash.
Yeah.
No, the other one. And there were people fighting to unionize again.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Right
there.
when I left. And man, did the company do a pretty good job of trying to suppress that
Absolutely.
for the employees.
Especially at their range of like company size, they probably did a really good job.
Yeah.
I worked for a union for a long time.
Was it
Obviously,
at a well-known grocery outlet? outlet.
Yes, it was. I was in a meat cutters union.
Uh-huh.
And off the gate, obviously, I'm very pro-union. I absolutely stand for it. And they helped me out. And they helped a lot of people not get fucked by a giant corporation.
Yes, I'm about worker protection.
Now, obviously, nothing is incorruptible.
Yes, there's corruption even in unions.
Yeah. However, it's better to have some sort of organized defense against, this big power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I get why
It's
people
bad enough
refuse
that
to
we
accept
live
their
in
jobs,
one of the at-will states, which most of them are, where companies can terminate without reason. And
Now, this interactive media agreement has an expiration date. You negotiate terms. A couple years later, you renegotiate terms. That's
Right.
how it works. They negotiated in the early 90s, then in the mid-90s, late 90s, early 2000s, mid-2000s, and then in 2010, they negotiated with the current one that I said, the $825 a session with a couple of other small rules. And that was set to expire in 2014. And again, the union decided
Forgettable year.
that renegotiations were in order. Now, SAG is probably one of the most well-known unions.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
for
because
sure.
it's all famous people,
Yeah.
Yeah. Aside from like iron workers or truck drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, SAG have their own awards.
SAG has protections in place for actors. They've been at this for over a century now, protecting actors. But as technology develops, new forms of media pop up, and then you have to negotiate new terms with whatever industry is trying to fuck these actors, essentially.
You could probably find parallels between when movies first started to become a thing, and then television, and now games. And
Yeah, I brought up this negotiation to a lot of people when I was talking about what this episode was going to be about. People were asking me questions. A lot of people remember the writer's strike.
yes,
The TV,
for
writer's
one,
strike.
yeah.
It's similar to that,
Yeah.
except that was the Screenwriters Guild.
Boy, did a lot of seasons of shows suffer from
Yeah.
That's
Or the
happened twice.
Writers
Did it
Guild
happen
of
again
America.
a couple years ago, or
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That was like...
because there's been 2 in the last decade.
Yeah, that was why Lost sucked.
Yeah, that was why.
Yeah, that was the only reason.
Also, shout out to the Baseball Players Association.
This
That's
is
one of
not
the major
video game
unions.
related, but absolutely look up sports strikes because they are very interesting.
Yeah.
The NFL one in the 80s is very interesting. There's a lot of great videos on that one.
The Baseball Players Union and I think the basketball one they're both very strong.
Yeah.
But it's also like I'm torn between like supporting Defense Against the Corporation and playing the smallest fiddle for millionaire athletes.
True.
You know what I mean?
That's similar
That's
to
like
SAG,
the screen.
right?
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
screen.
Similar to SAG. But there are a lot of protections in place for actors, film actors, I should say, and voice actors. Surprise, surprise, don't get those same protections.
No.
Now, they have a different job, but they are, I'd say, I don't want to spoil it, but they are less protected than actors.
It's because your whole body's not moving.
Yeah. But when it came time in 2014 for this renegotiation to happen, they had some very important stipulations to renewing this contract with the video game publisher collective. And one of the biggest one came down to residuals. Now, if you don't know what residuals are, if you're Robert Downey Jr. and you're doing an Avengers movie, you can get paid $50 million or you can get paid $40 million plus a cut of the whatever the movie makes, and obviously you're going to want to do that because Avengers made $3 billion or whatever, $2 billion or whatever.
And then for every Iron Man dildo they make, Robert Downey Jr.
you
gets a couple cents.
Yeah, you get all that stuff. Video games.
That's a huge one for games because
Video games do not pay residuals. And there are a few reasons why residuals were never really included in these contracts. Number one was that the last time this came up was 2005 when video games were
a smaller industry,
small
quote
unquote industry, which was listed about $11 billion in 2005.
Where are they at now?
As opposed to the film industry, which in 2005 was worth $100 billion.
Yeah.
The whole industry?
Yeah.
In 2005. And how much Avengers made in like one weekend?
This is pre-MCU.
Yeah. Additionally, games, unlike movies, are not really promoted. I should say in 2005, we're not really promoted for who was in them.
Let's say pre-Death Stranding. I know. That's not the only example, but that's just the most.
If you were in a video game as a voice actor in 2005, you were in the credits. You weren't in the commercials.
It's weird. I actually generally care a lot about like who's in what game.
Sure.
You saw that a lot more, I would say, towards the end of that generation. Yeah.
PS3, Xbox 360
yes.
era.
Yeah. That, and
also, I think Conker's Bad Fur Day might have been the first game, also N64 era, that had heavy voice acting that I remember.
That was like 2000. That was I know Perfect Dark did, and stuff like that. But yeah, that was up there.
Lastly,
as opposed to the Banjo-Kazooie, like.
Lastly, game production costs are off the charts compared to movie production costs. You can pay Robert Downey Jr. $50 million for Avengers because you know you're going to make it back. You're paying your lighting guys a normal salary. Whereas video games is like there's 4,000 people making the next Assassin's Creed.
Game budgets are not what they used to be.
The game has to sell a certain amount in order to make it. Now you have server costs that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
So you don't even get all the money back when the game is done because then you have to pay to maintain it and to update it. And
you know how in 2005 the B game still existed?
Yeah.
It was what killed them.
As early as 2008, residuals were being talked about. 2008, does that year sound familiar for any particular game?
Is that GTA 4?
It is.
Yes, it is.
But again, the contract was extended in 2010 without them. But by the time 2014 had come around, there wasn't one GTA 4 every 10 years. There were like 15 of them. So by 2014, video games had, in less than a decade, caught up to that $100 billion market value that the film industry had. And I think they're both way past that now.
Couple more Halos and Call of Duties later. A couple Assassin's Creeds. We were like, hey.
Mm-hmm. And residuals were becoming part of the conversation. One important case, in an interview with the New York Times in May 2008, voice actor Michael Hollick, better known as Nico Bellic, said he was paid a fairly hefty sum of $100,000 for his work in Grand Theft Auto 4.
Nice.
But that was over 16 months of work.
It's a big script.
And because he got no residuals, he received none of the roughly $600 million that GTA 4 would go on to make in its first week.
This is in May, this interview? That game came out in like March, so like that's
how... The game came out in April. This was a month later.
This is a month? That's
GTA 4 has obviously made way more than that now. And
you mean GTA 5?
No, 4.
Oh, because 4 would just continue to be.
Which was just a beta for GTA 5.
And imagine how the GTA 5 actors feel now with their game currently sitting at
the intellectual property, like
115 million copies sold now. Yeah.
How much do you think?
I bought that game personally three times.
I bought it 3 times too.
Yeah, me too.
360, PS4, and then PC.
Yeah.
And then it was funny because when we talked about it in the Hot Coffee episode, that had like Samuel L. Jackson and stuff as like a character.
If you want to go back and listen, that's episode 2.
Yeah.
But what's funny about GTA 5 is they're not immediately recognizable, other than I think Michael's son is Danny Tamborelli from Pete and Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
what about the guy who talks Trevor? That's
Trevor.
fucking...
He's in Westworld.
Yeah, he's a big guy, right? Isn't he? He's like an actor though.
Well, sure, but I guarantee that this is probably his most like financially successful thing that he's like been a part of.
He looks like that character too.
He does. Yeah.
Have you ever seen him act like Trevor in person? Because he's just as scary.
It's great.
But yeah, that is point 1. Point 2 is stunt pay. Now, obviously, as Chris made a joke about earlier, being a voice actor is not the same as being a stuntman. But a lot of voice actors complain about what they would call vocally stressful roles.
There's a lot of screaming and stuff.
There's a lot of screaming.
Yeah.
Dude, if I fucking play a show and then talk for 10 hours, like to my friend, there are times when I talk to you guys here,
you're like,
and
my
go
mouth
home and
is
talk,
dry,
and I'm like, fuck. And that's just bullshit.
Well, think about singers that you know fucking.
Well, yeah,
like.
And they have protection.
Right, yeah, that's true. Because if you're playing, like, there are a lot of actors in Call of Duty games, and if you think about some of those, it's like, it's hours of them screaming, like having to yell over all of the
because you think they're in a booth
explosions.
Yelling, but in the game they're yelling over gunfire and explosions and grenades and shit. Exactly.
Yeah. They talk about that a lot on that movie with I Know That Voice. I think
is that the one with
They talk about just like the general stress that puts on your throat.
Because if you think about it, actors like this, you're not a Tom Cruise who can do one movie and be like, cool, now I don't have to work ever again in my fucking life. These
But
actors,
I will, so I can keep paying the Church of Scientology all the money they used to operate.
Yeah.
No, it's that and real estate.
And John Travolta's... Wait, never mind. He doesn't act anymore. Oh, sorry, I meant to say, wait, his movies don't make money anymore.
Yeah.
The ones that are produced by Redbox and Netflix, or no, Redbox and MoviePass.
Yeah. But a lot of these actors jump from role to role in order to make a living.
Yeah.
And there is no...
Probably multiple games at once and stuff.
There's no OSHA regulations for your voice.
Mm-hmm.
There's OSHA regulations, which is the official Safety and Health Administration. But yeah, that's the people who, if you're a construction worker and you get your leg hurt, there's like...
Oh, wait, did you say OSHA?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to think about how whether or not David Miscavige is going to come after Hot Button.
God, please.
I worked in hazmat for a long time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I'm very big part of the industry of regulations, which is
Yeah.
where all these things come from. And it's funny, OSHA is to make sure your fucking fans aren't falling off the ceiling and banging your people in the head. They make sure all your equipment is safe and there's rules that you have to follow to keep your employees
Okay.
safe.
Yeah.
Are you forklift trained?
Yeah, absolutely.
me too.
I can drive a forklift backwards down a mountain, dude. I'm a pro.
Can you do a wheelie?
Absolutely. I can flip a dime onto a forklift, and I have.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's way easier than you think.
I never tried it, so it's pretty cool though.
But, yeah, if you think about, somebody like Troy Baker who does 5 video games a year, if he throws out his voice,
That would stop him from working
that would stop
for a
him
while.
from working. And there's nothing to say hey, you should, I was screaming as the fucking Joker and now I can't get a job, so you got to pay me medical benefits or
Yeah,
leave or
Mark
whatever.
Hamill did it, and then he just disappeared after that.
Yeah.
He's an amazing voice actor, Mark Hamill. I have no idea how he's not.
I was just talking about how he disappeared in the movie.
Oh,
I thought that would have done better.
oh sorry.
And in addition to this, not only is there vocally stressful roles, but now motion capture, you're essentially a stuntman.
Yeah. Naughty Dog and Rockstar games.
When Norman Reedus trips and falls in Death Stranding because I'm carrying 120 pounds on my back, they had to mocap for Norman Reedus falling. So
just hooked him off a cliff with a bunch of packages.
Yeah.
All right, looks good, Norman.
Are you sure, Kojima? Yes,
yeah.
trust me, it's for the game.
Now get up.
I think Kojima just wakes up every day and goes, man, everybody's an idiot. I shouldn't be allowed to do what I do all the time.
He's in it for the long con, yeah.
But, essentially, at this point, video game actors are actors that, sometimes they're voice actors.
Absolutely.
Some of the behind-the-scenes stuff in The Last of Us is wild.
The
You
Last
think
of Us
it's
and Uncharted behind the scenes
Yeah.
is literally on a soundstage, basically making a movie.
It looks like behind the scenes of any super large budget Hollywood film. It's incredible.
Finally, it doesn't just have to be Andy Serkis doing every broadcasting in Hollywood.
Exactly.
Now everybody gets a chance.
And lastly, the last of the 3 points that they wanted
This one I thought was crazy.
was the transparency concerns they have, which is, we all know how secretive the video game industry is compared to the
Fucking
film industry.
Stupid, yeah.
If Guillermo, or what's his name? Benicio del Toro, sorry.
Death Stranding still in your mind.
We have that stupid picture of the dark universe of all of them sitting in suits.
Oh, yeah.
Those movies didn't even come out.
No, they're all canceled. That initiative's over. It's
Yeah.
done.
But we still know who they were cast as
Yeah.
the second they were cast
Johnny
as.
Depp was going to be the Invisible Man, so we didn't have to look at him.
In the video game industry, it should come as no surprise with all the secrecy surrounding it that many actors are made to sign NDAs. And above that, a lot of them are not even told what role they will be playing, whether or not that character was played by somebody else before, whether or not that character has existed before or is part of a series. And sometimes,
If there's even sensitive material,
So bizarre.
they won't,
you
they
need
won't
to
even
do your job.
they won't even tell them hey, you're going to be a racist. So watch out for that.
Yeah.
And on top of that, a lot of lower profile actors, I'll say, I'm sure the people who played the main 3 in GTA 5 knew they were going to be the main 3, but side characters, they don't even know who they're playing until they play and hear their own voice in the game, or see the credits of the game.
That's
a lot
wild.
of times, the NDA for who they are playing extends to when the game is released. So, like, they don't even hear.
God, video game industry, can you stop acting like 5 seconds of like a footage of your game is like having the equivalent of nuclear launch codes?
I know.
Yeah, that is bizarre to me. There's a level of spoilers that can be managed by people that it's like
not
you
even.
don't.
Well, I mean that too, but also it's just like you ever notice how like it's so easy to look up the budget of any film and how well it did.
Yeah, that's all public.
Video games don't work like that. Like unless they make an announcement of any of that stuff, it's just ridiculous. I don't know.
Yeah, you're not gonna get that unless Rockstar. Look at how much money we made.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's the thing. If your game does really well, then a publisher will come out and be like, "Yo, we sold fucking X many copies."
Yeah.
But if a game doesn't do well, they're not gonna be like, our game sold this much. Like they're not going to say that.
Yeah.
Like just like they're not going to say we went over budget and like or whatever.
Now that those 3 points are laid out, let me tell you that
That's what makes this stupid podcast so hard to research for.
September 2014, the interactive media agreement expires, and so negotiations begin in late 2014 to renew. But
Good.
this
We got
time,
Peter Dinklage in there to be the first ghost just in time.
Yeah. This time, the actors aren't just re-signing the thing. They're not backing down now. So here is their plan for how to handle those 3 points that I just laid out. Number one,
All right, lay it on me.
performance bonuses. Actors want an additional $825 a session. Basically, they want to be paid double per session. For every 4-hour session they did, for every 2 million copies of a game is sold, up to 8 million copies.
That
is
seems
a
fair.
lot of text.
And it
But
stops at 8 million?
basically, think about it like this. If it took 40 hours for Troy Baker to record his thing in Death Stranding, he made whatever 825 is times 40 for that.
He wants like another $4,000 per 4 hours if the game makes a bunch
He
of
wants $1,650 per session if the game sells 2 million copies, and then he wants $2,400 if the game sells 4 million copies, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Per session. So those 10 sessions,
They just want it to scale with the game's profitability.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know. I just think it's interesting that it stops at 8 million. Like that doesn't really curb like the GTA problem,
No, but it's something.
Yeah.
I think
No.
this was
I'm on their side.
This was their way to kind of meet the video game industry in the middle.
Right. I guess
And
they
as
didn't.
we'll find out, that does not mean them in the middle. Because there is no middle.
Yeah. No, they set their expectations in a more realistic way. I get it.
Yeah. Problem number 2, the vocally stressful roles stipulation.
A screaming clause.
A division in SAG-AFTRA would be developed to evaluate any vocal injuries that actors would sustain. They would get paid hazard pay if they sustained these injuries. And they even threatened to get OSHA involved if the video game industry didn't meet them on this demand, because having OSHA involved is obviously having the government involved, which is a lot worse than just paying somebody an extra couple $100 if they stress out their throat,
Well, yeah,
Right,
if you're a
yeah.
capitalist, you don't want the government involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And lastly, the third one on the transparency issue, they wanted regulations in place to allow actors who sign NDAs to be provided with any details and have any of their questions about the role answered, but to sign an NDA to maintain the secrecy.
Yeah, when
That
you
is
said that-
absolutely fair.
Yeah, when you said that, I was curious. It's like, if you don't tell the character what kind of, how you can arguably get a better performance out of somebody.
No,
if
totally.
have
You
full
can't prepare
transparency.
for the role, like in
Yeah,
a lot
you're
of the
this
cases.
character. You have this history. Okay, cool. Then make them sign an NDA.
Yeah.
It's the same fucking thing.
As opposed to actors who have a full understanding of their character's motivations before they.
Yeah.
How long do they have to comply on this? Like, I guess,
There's no time limit. So they started before the agreement expired.
okay.
By the time the agreement expired, no new agreement was reached.
That really was all asking too much, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Many actors continued to work under the old agreement in good faith that one would be reached. There was like a behind the scenes handshake thing, like, hey, I'll keep working on fucking Call of Duty 18 or whatever. If we renegotiate new terms and you're supposed to pay me more, you're going to pay me more, right?
Yeah.
And the video game guys are like, yeah, sure. That didn't happen. So that's the end of 2014. Additional meetings were held in February of 2015 and June in 2015. Again, both of those not proving any fruitful at all.
Great.
No agreement reached. We're going to fast forward a little bit to September 2015, which is the 1 year mark. We have now had 1 year without any agreement.
I think over at the end Call of Duty Infinite Studios, Kevin Spacey's like, we're all friends here. Come on, let's get it done.
It was Advanced Warfare.
Oh yeah, Advanced Warfare. That's right. When did that one come out? Before 2015, right?
I think
That was 2014.
It was 2015.
Was it 2014?
Yeah,
Okay.
because it was Ghost was the. Well, that's the thing I find interesting about this timeline here is that like this is all at the launch of the last generation, and then now games are hitting their stride and becoming bigger. And
Yeah,
that's right. This is the console generation switchovers around this era, right?
Yeah.
Because wasn't this Xbox One came out when 2015?
The
right?
end of 2013.
2013. Yeah. That's
PS4 I think was only a week apart.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
And any game that had been coming out, any launch titles had long been, worked.
Yeah,
since
so all the
then,
cross-gen stuff was starting to disappear around this time.
anything that's going to be major coming out for the next 3 years is being made right now.
Yes, and anything getting announced at this time, you know, like for sure.
SAG-AFTRA came out in September 2015 and basically said, hey, look, everybody, negotiations, they're not going well. And they are quoted as saying that publishers' demands were, quote, crazy and outrageous. So, because of these crazy and outrageous demands by the publishers, the union authorized a vote for a strike, where all of the members of SAG-AFTRA, who were a part of this specific branch of it for video game voice acting, voted as to whether or not they were going to strike. 96% voted yes.
That's a large percent.
Fucking A.
But the strike didn't begin. For those of you that don't know, the way it works is they voted for the strike. So they now have authorization from their members to issue a strike.
Yeah.
But that's like a bargaining chip in itself.
Yeah,
Because
it's like we voted.
You can be like, we can strike at any time. Now let's renegotiate.
Yeah, or else. Yeah, it's like.
Or else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So negotiations continued into 2016, again with more people continuing to work on this good faith system. And no strike yet. And with this bargaining chip of a looming strike, negotiations began to move forward just a little bit. One of these was SAG-AFTRA, and the video game industry obviously were like, well, we can't pay you that much money extra residuals if it's like a lower budget game. So SAG-AFTRA created a special clause within this residuals thing for lower budget or indie games with budgets lower than $250,000.
Yes, but those games, if they still became that it doesn't matter what the fucking budget is, it's the profit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're looking to get residuals from massive amounts of profits.
I think the idea being like, if your game costs $15.
And you sell 8 million copies, you should. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I understand there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I guess it's just.
It's because you're right. It's not based off of the number of profits, based off the number of copies.
It's just confusing because it's like Minecraft's the best-selling game in the world, and they've never charged more than $20 for it or $30 for it or whatever. And it's like a budget lower than $250,000. It's like that's actually. I mean, I don't know how much a lot of indie games cost, but. Because now people throw out the term triple I or whatever, where like indie games have larger budgets but just aren't giant budgets. But yeah, getting fixated on the production part of it is kind of
this
it should be focused more on the profits than the copies, and it's a little bit harder to.
I think the way this worked is like a session and a half's worth of pay. Or like half a session's worth of pay. So if it was $825, you could make like an extra $400 per session for every 500,000 copies the game sold, up to 2 million. That was like the indie clause.
They just scaled it for that.
They just scaled it down.
It's crazy how just stuck up these companies are about that extra bonus, because it's even video games that feature a lot of voice acting don't traditionally have super large casts.
You guys need to be ready to get mad with me
I'm ready to get
in
mad.
A couple minutes, because
at the moment I'm giving companies the benefit of the doubt that it costs a lot to make a video game, and
it does. That is true.
We'll get there
because I remember around this time a lot of people were like, as far as I know, there isn't a union for a lot of artists and programmers and engineers and testers that work on games.
That is a issue that is currently ongoing as of the recording of this episode.
And laughable that there is no union of programmers.
I know.
Hopefully.
Holding this whole country together.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully. If you're listening to this a couple years down the line, there is one. We might cover that in the future, but it's still very much ongoing. So, but one stride that was made was that $825 for 4-hour thing. Yeah, that was increased to $950.
So they got $1 more an hour, basically.
And publishers fired back with their version of residuals. They were not residuals. It still doesn't matter how well the game does. What the publishers wanted to do was a sliding bonus based on basically how important you were to the game. So, like, you get paid $900 or whatever for every 4-hour session, right? But if you're in there for 4 or less hours and you're a small bit part, you get like a $50 bonus. If you're Troy Baker in The Last of Us or Ashley Johnson in The Last of Us and you're in there for 8 or more sessions, you get paid for an additional session as a bonus.
Okay.
That was their counteroffer. Shit.
Yeah, doesn't...
And their whole thing was like, you're getting paid more if you do a lot of work. I don't understand. They're like, we don't care about getting paid more if we do a lot of work. We care about getting paid more for doing important work. If your game does really well...
I just recently replayed that game. Pay them more.
Yeah.
It's interesting, too, because it's like, I wonder how these sessions work in the sense of, like, we've all recorded as musicians, and it's funny because it's like the quicker we can get better takes. I don't know. Like, I wonder if that's the same.
I'm sure it can be a slog sometimes.
No, it absolutely can. I just more mean, like, for
I think the idea
a lot of performers.
I think it's supposed to be like, the only hazard thing they have is like, you need to rest your voice. So I think it's divided into 4-hour sessions so that they don't have to yell for 12 straight hours.
That makes perfect sense.
And obviously, like, you look at, Google GTA 5 script, and it's like,
oh God, you see the
it's thicker than this can of the cider I'm drinking is tall. So obviously that wasn't 8 or more sessions for sure.
It's
but like,
dumb. Yeah,
it is, and this is something they talk about. I think on Harmontown he talked about how, or he had somebody in gaming talking about how.
I know he's a Fallout fan, so there's huge scripts for those too.
In future, like, let's say VR advanced along the route that we want it to versus the way it is going. Yeah. Let's say you have those games. What makes those games so good is environmental shit. So think about how much of that GTA script dialogue is you're just walking down the street and there's some guy on a phone like, yeah, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah,
and it
totally.
That's still fucking full-on voice line, still a guy recording, still all that. Like, it's not just nothing.
No, you're 100% right, because when I say it's dumb, I more meant it's dumb when you just see this big packet.
I know what you meant.
Yeah, and it's not dumb, it's brilliant, because it's this huge stack of all the things that they need recorded vocally. It's like you have your story and all your cutscenes, but then there are the NPC dialogue that you just said, and then there's all this optional side quest stuff.
There's like Austin said with Fallout or Skyrim.
There's like
that guy who plays the Dark Elf in every fucking. He's the same. I know the guy. He talks to the bartender in the one town in whatever Ulfric City is. But he's been in every Elder Scrolls game. He does several voices in all those games. Yeah, you recognize his voice. Like, I'm serious. Because
there's tons of voice acting we've played hundreds of hours of all these games. There's tons of voice acting we probably have never even heard because it's all circumstantial.
I don't even know that guy's name I was just talking about, but I can tell you his voice.
It's like when you look at Red Dead, if there are areas of the map you don't explore, like they could open up into entire quest lines that you may not ever see.
That's the whole point of that movie. I know that voice is like you don't know who the fuck these people are, but you know their voices.
Think about the hours of that GTA 5 packet that were dedicated solely to what they needed recorded for the radio stations.
Yeah.
Of just all of the interviews and
Henry Rollins
fake ass
is fucking in there. They have like all these different fucking people they got to like do these things.
Yeah, and if you don't like country, then there's like 100 pages of that packet
just
that you're never going to hear.
Yeah, exactly. I've never listened to 80% of those radio stations. You know what I mean? And there's so much shit, and they're fucking great if you do. Sidebar, we don't have to keep this in. I just want to tell you guys why we have the momentum of funny voice acting moments in GTA. Best moment I've ever had in Grand Theft Auto was a random occurrence, and I had it recorded and I fucking lost because Xbox saves over old videos as it moves
really?
on. Yeah, did not know that.
I gotta make sure I didn't lose some.
Because if you like save it and like edit it, it'll stay there, but not if you just leave it as recorded. Yeah, I've lost so many good videos.
I gotta go back. Yeah.
It's a first-person video. I just died. I wake up. I look at my phone. I'm somewhere in like the northern desert area. I look at my phone. Doop, boop, boop. Put it down. A guy on a fucking four-wheeler's riding down the street in a cop car. Woo, woo, smashes into him, fucking rails him, kills him. Both the cops get out with their guns drawn and run over to him. Go, dead as hell. All right, let's get a beer. And then they get in their car and drive away. And I was just like, what the fuck just happened? It was I recorded immediately. Like, it's just such like a... That could have happened. What are the chances of that just happening?
You might have never heard that dialogue
ever. Yeah, dead as hell. Let's get a beer. And they just drive away.
There's even a lot of dialogue written in a lot of these games that are so specific. It's only if the player reacts to a certain situation in a particular way. Like,
I know all you sissies out there never pick the bad dialogue options. So what happened to those 5 hours of work?
Do you remember the Outer World says like people are talking about what the playthroughs are if you make your character super dumb, and apparently it's hilarious. There's just all the characters that have to be rewritten to like try and dumb things down for you, or just they just don't bother because you're too stupid to understand.
That's funny.
I mean, if you think about the interaction you were talking about, like that's just for if a cop hits and kills a civilian.
Yes,
which I'm sure happens a lot in GTA, but like
yes, in GTA, yes.
Yeah,
but they probably have multiple. Like it's probably not the same one.
Oh yeah, not in the real world.
No, never.
Thank you. No.
Oh
no,
wait,
exactly. Also, yes, there's probably multiples. Probably different cops from. These were the cops of the sheriffs in the dusty part of town, not in the fucking southern, in the city.
Even the chatter, the police chatter is like, if you ever listen to that game, is very specific to what you're doing and where you are. Like they'll tell you you're on this road and they committed this crime, and you're like, that's crazy that they need it.
What about all the people that had to learn Simlish to be able to do all this with the voice acting?
All those musicians that re-sang their songs in Simlish.
So let's do the rest of this podcast in Simlish.
No.
It was not about you.
Now, the industry proposed this sliding scale that I mentioned.
People have tried to translate that, by the way.
Because off of Simlish. We're done with Simlish. Now, the industry introduced this sliding scale that I mentioned because they obviously did not agree with residuals.
No.
They don't want to pay actors more after. They want to make all the money from, from the game. And here is how, ready to get angry? Here is how they phrase this. No artist or programmers receive residuals, and since voice actors account for less than 0.1% of the total work that goes into a game, why should they get paid residuals?
We don't pay anybody fairly. Why would we pay them fairly?
Exactly. I was like, yes, give the programmers and artists residuals too.
I like, Austin, your note here in bright red that says maybe pay everyone more, question mark.
Yeah. Maybe maybe it should.
We're already screwing over everybody.
Oh my god! Yeah, the system is broken. We have to make profits.
Yeah.
Why would we recycle our profits back into our own workers to improve their lives?
That's a lot of companies that they do the thing. They throw their hands up and they're like, "It's the government that's fucked up. We're just all a part of the same fucked up thing."
This goes into the whole system of sometimes you do get paid bonuses based on the performance of the game, but you don't get paid for
based
how well the game
Metacritic
sells.
score.
You get paid for how well the game reviews.
Yeah.
And then you had those instances where they're like, if it gets above a 90 on Metacritic, you'll get paid an extra $1,000 each, and then the game gets an 89 on Metacritic.
Yeah.
And then everybody's like, well, I guess I won't go grocery shopping.
What happens when you're like a poor Tim Schafer who keeps making games that review super well but never sell well?
You get bought by Microsoft.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it should come as no surprise to anybody that negotiations still aren't going well. The actors don't want this fucking sliding scale. They want their goddamn residuals.
Yeah.
And they increased this 9%, but the increase of 9%, I should have mentioned, was timed. So it was like, we'll give you an extra 9%, but we got to finish these negotiations soon or that's going to expire as well. They gave that a time limit for the end of 2016. So here we are, now 2 years and a month after the original agreement expired. Negotiations have officially broken down, and SAG-AFTRA finally pulls the trigger and issues a strike on October 21st, 2016.
There it is.
The strike targets 11 publishers, who I will now read, and you guys will go, huh? A couple times, because I haven't heard of all these people.
Yeah, there's one in particular, or a couple, but this one.
Electronic Arts.
I know them.
WB Games.
I know them.
Disney.
Yeah.
Activision. Mm-hmm. Blind Light. Discovery. The channel? I think so.
Okay.
Formosa Interactive. I think some of these are for voice actors who aren't in games. It might be voice actors who are in cartoons or something.
Is Discovery people who voiceovers for
documentaries and shit? Maybe. Insomniac Games.
Know them.
Interactive Associates.
That might be one of the least original names I think I've ever seen.
Take-Two Interactive.
Absolutely know them.
And and someone named VoiceWorks Productions.
Okay. That might just be a company that like works specifically in just recording and producing VO.
A lot of these could be third-party studios that house equipment for doing.
That's what I'm guessing. VoiceWorks
voiceover
production
for
is.
things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rockstar probably has a place in-house where you go and fucking record shit. But like, it's not like all
It should
these
be noted,
people.
I think Square Enix was also included in this later because, as Randy mentioned, Life is Strange. And now, this strike has an additional stipulation, which is not only do they want this transparency, this hazard pay, and these residuals, but now people have been working in good faith for 2 years. And an additional requirement is given by SAG-AFTRA. Whatever the terms are negotiated as, you got to pay everybody that's been working in good faith since February 17th, 2015.
Based on the new terms. That's a good bargaining chip thing, because that's an unrealistic expectation. They know that, but that's a good thing. It's like, all right, we'll drop that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You saw that a lot in the ESRB episode.
Yeah.
There were certain things that they threw in, too.
Yeah. This is when picket lines started forming. The first picket line was on October 24th, 2016, 3 days after the strike was issued.
Yes.
Outside of Electronic Arts headquarters.
I remember this. There's pictures of it.
With additional ones throughout the month of November popping up at places like Insomniac and Activision and WB. Voice actors are starting to spread a hashtag on social media called #PerformanceMatters in support of the SAG-AFTRA Voice Actors Union.
And this got in the way of the Small Penis Association, who was also at the time trying to
Performance Matters.
Hashtag Performance Matters. Bit of a mix-up.
But yeah, this is when the public is now aware.
Gotcha.
And here's the funny part.
This is probably maybe around when it came into our wheelhouse too. I remember Kotaku reporting pretty heavily on this.
Once again, thank you to the Internet Archive for letting me visit sites that are no longer up. All the publishers I mentioned earlier launched their own website as a call to action to SAG-AFTRA members to force the union to settle, and it listed off all of its offers.
And these were other SAG-AFTRA people that weren't for video games, right? Because the whole union didn't strike, just the people related to the video
Just the voice actors, yeah. The strike was specifically targeting those companies I listed.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you were a SAG-AFTRA member, you could work for companies that weren't being a part of the strike.
Yeah.
So here's some snippets from that website. On vocal stress, here's what the Publishers Association says. In key areas SAG-AFTRA has raised as strike issues such as vocal stress and stunt coordination, our positions are in fact identical. On transparency, enhance company's proposal by agreeing to additionally provide whether a role is being reprised or end project code names. Disclosure now includes full and forthright description of the role to be played, must be given at the time of booking. To the extent known at the time of the booking, such as descriptions including genre, fighter, shooter, RPG, simulation, racing, sport, puzzle, kids, casual, strategy, length of performer's role,
hentai games,
use of
kids, casual strategy. That's a good.
Hold on. Use of unusual terminology, use of profanity, content of a sexual or violent nature, racial slurs, whether stunts will be required, whether memorization is required, and whether cue cards or other prompting devices can be used.
This seems like relatively basic information for you be able to perform your job.
Yeah.
Yes, this is what actors know before they accept roles to anything. Also, when you say casual kid strategy, would that be the Mario
I was thinking the Mario
Rabbids?
Yeah, sure. Kid XCOM. On residuals, the company's proposal is guaranteed money to performers who work more than one session on a game paid at the time the game launches, and is not in any way a choice by the video game producer or dependent on the success or failure of the title, so much of which is outside the performer's control.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're saying, you'll get paid more whether or not the game does well. Isn't that better? And the voice actors are like, no.
No.
And finally, they're trying to turn the members of SAG-AFTRA on the organization SAG-AFTRA and saying, why don't you get what you want? Stop letting them tell you what to do. You make them let you vote on this so we can get this over with, which is the whole fucking point of unions, is that you don't, they represent you.
Yeah. Because this has already been going on for...
Yeah. Now, what's interesting about this is that unlike the TV writer strike I mentioned, or a couple of other strikes that have happened within SAG-AFTRA, the effects were not felt as soon or heavily as they were in those cases because if you're doing voice acting for a game in 2016, it might not even be out as a
2019,
recording.
yeah.
Like,
That's a
it
good
takes
point.
a long time. And if this is settled anytime within the next couple of years, people could theoretically just hop back in there and re-record their dialogue at the end of production or whatever.
I wonder if that's happened with
But-
some stuff. Yeah.
There were only 2 instances where the strike actually affected the development of video games.
Yeah. I know this first one. I did not know the second one.
Yeah. Number 1 was in Randy's intro. Ashley Birch,
Yeah.
a notable voice actor, voiced Chloe in Life is Strange. And when they decided to make a prequel to Life is Strange, known as Life is Strange Before the Storm, they made it during the strike. And as such, Ashley Birch was unable to reprise her role as Chloe. And the role went to Rihanna DeVries, who
Yeah.
did
She did fine.
Okay
yeah,
job.
it's not
Scab.
that it's not that her performance in the game was a problem. It was just that the character was already so recognizable.
She also,
And-
she is a scab, but she got vocally coached by Ashley Birch. Because the thing
Yeah.
was,
Ashley Birch was very supportive.
she wasn't allowed to
and-
be an actor, but she was allowed to be a producer. So she's a producer on the game, and she like coached her vocally.
That's cool.
yeah. And number 2, John Carpenter,
Yeah.
famous for making the original Halloween movie and The Thing, was set to narrate over a section of What Remains of Edith Finch, a game by a studio known as Giant Sparrow. They made an entire section of the game that was heavily inspired by Carpenter's Tales from the Crypt,
That's fucking wild.
but he could not do so because he was also a part of SAG-AFTRA. So instead, Carpenter just licensed the Halloween theme to be used over the section.
That's
I remember
cute.
that section
Yeah,
too.
I was gonna say you played through that.
Yep.
That's
That's cool because he
Yeah.
doesn't give a shit. He did it out of solidarity because I'm not. Yeah, but he
he's
probably,
a big gamer. He likes games.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, he just did it because he understood what was
Yeah.
fucking happening.
Yeah.
Like, John Carpenter doesn't give a shit. Nobody's gonna give him shit if he voice acted in this.
Yeah.
Like no Troy Baker, none of these big guys are gonna care if he does that.
Yeah.
But like, did it anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
So those 2 were the only ones affected, again, because Life is Strange is an episodic game, so those get cranked out pretty quickly. And
Well, they should theoretically.
before the storm
Ain't the same with 2.
before the storm came out, mostly within
No,
a
they
year.
stuck to their schedule for
Yeah.
that one. Yeah.
And What Remains of Edith Finch is an indie game, and this was just a small bit part, so it wasn't like it affected it very heavily. It was just a cool little Easter egg that would have been in there.
Yeah.
But we now come to September 23rd, 2017, 1 year after the strike starts, and 3 years after the original interactive media agreement was expired. The strike is now over, and terms have been reached. To put it lightly, the video game industry got their way. Residuals
Hey.
were not included in the agreement, but that sliding scale bonus thing that I mentioned earlier was.
Yeah.
The only negotiation that SAG-AFTRA had in this was that it was now a lot more money, sliding from $75 bonus for one session all the way up to $2,100 for 8 or more sessions.
Nice.
Still, if you're a main character like a Troy Baker in Last of Us and you're working literally like 2 years on a game,
Yeah.
you're making an extra $2,100. Not great, but
No.
Yeah.
the agreement also states that the parties officially agree to continue to work on addressing vocally stressful
Good.
things.
Yeah.
There is no wording at all or anything, no rules. They just said, we'll keep working on it. So that wasn't resolved.
Oh.
And lastly,
Sorry, I keep getting like my hopes up. I'm like, oh, they addressed this, and then you're like, well, not really, kinda, and then.
here's the only one they kind of won out on.
Is this the transparency
Yeah,
one?
the agreement states that new transparency provisions will enhance the bargaining power of members representatives by requiring the companies to disclose the codename of project, genre, whether the game is based on a previously published intellectual property, whether the performer is reprising a prior role. Members are also protected by disclosure of whether they will be required to use unusual terminology, profanity, or racial slurs, and whether there will be content of a sexual, violent nature, and whether stunts will be required. Basically, the thing I read earlier.
So they won that one.
They won that one.
All right.
Now,
That's good.
A lot of members
Well,
of
that's funny. It's just like, how much does that matter for like in a game like The Last of Us, where it's like, all right, Troy, you're just gonna be playing a guy. We can't tell you who, but you're a guy, and like say these things.
Well, I mean, Nolan North was a cannibalistic rapist, like essentially.
That's true.
And then, it's like hope he knew what he was getting into.
I have to imagine Naughty Dog trusted him enough to give him that information. After
Yeah, no, totally. After him playing the most likable, charming character, and then
But a lot of the members of SAG-AFTRA were not too happy with this, obviously. They voiced concerns that residuals were not included, that there was zero progress made on the vocally stressful things, and that SAG had not really followed through on their promise to get OSHA involved, as they said at the beginning.
Yeah.
And on top of this, studios were using non-union actors during the strike, and those non-union actors were being paid more than the new terms were allowing union voice actors to be paid.
Of course, what you do. You throw the money in. To
clearly
the
these companies have the money to pay more. It's just, this is how negotiating terms works.
Small victories.
They feared that not only was SAG-AFTRA not doing its best to support the voice actors in the union, but that they were not doing enough really to protect non-union voice actors. Like, you know, if you think about like the fact that somebody could have been a non-union voice actor during the strike and they were making more money than they could have in the union, then what's the point of joining SAG-AFTRA?
Well, yeah, that's the point. To not only, but that's the thing. They'll pay them more now because not only is it kind of a power move for the companies to pay them more, because then it inspires people to not join the unions, and then they can dissolve them easier, and then they can go back to just paying whatever the fuck they want, including horrible wages.
Yeah.
And also, B, those people can maneuver for that sort of pay because they understand that the unions are striking, and you go somewhere else you're going to go.
Yeah.
You know? It's not good on either front.
Yeah. The unions addressed these concerns, citing fanatical refusal from publishers on a lot of these issues. But regardless of people's concerns, the agreement was officially approved on October 9th, 2017, and officially went into effect on November 7th, 2017. Now, if you've been listening to Hot Button, I've brought up this story twice already. This will be the third and hopefully final time I bring it up.
Last week.
There was only one notable instance I can come up with where this has had an effect after the fact, and that has to do with Borderlands 3 and Troy Baker. Troy Baker voiced the role of Reese in Tales from the Borderlands.
Great actor, great character, great game.
Yep. And the character, Reese, is also in Borderlands 3, but it's not voiced by Troy Baker.
Yeah.
Troy said on the subject, "I can't do a non-union gig." And without getting too deep into the weeds of that, we had a long conversation about this. We always knew going into it that this was going to be the thing. They were going to take these characters and put them from the Tales series from Telltale into Borderlands proper. I've been waiting for this call where they were like, "Do you want to do this?" And I said yes. They never called because they would never move from this position. I'm not mad. It's invariably a completely different character, but it still stings. This is the one thing I couldn't really find any information on, but I believe he's doing this in solidarity. You know, he doesn't want to do non-union gigs because he's a part of the union.
And he's a very well-known performer.
Well, and that's good. That's responsibility for your demand and your power.
And having respect for your peers. And
he is arguably one of the top 3 most recognizable fucking voice actors.
Absolutely.
Yes.
As far as the power of his roles, not necessarily the quantity, you know.
Yeah.
But obviously also the quantity, you know.
But yeah, he says he can't accept work on a production that hasn't also signed a contract with SAG-AFTRA. That is not a rule. I think that is his internal politics, because Tiny Tina, voiced by Ashley Birch, is in Borderlands 3, and she is also a SAG-AFTRA actor. So I don't know.
It's got to be his personal thing.
It's his personal thing. SAG-AFTRA followed up on Troy's statement with the following: "We applaud any member who stands up for workplace fairness and the integrity of their creative work. It is a courteous decision to act in the best interests of one's fellow SAG-AFTRA members, and this honors all working people." So that language pretty much says he's doing it in solidarity, not because it's a rule. "The misguided decision by Gearbox to deny their performance the opportunity to have fair union wages, a safe workplace, and the possibility of health care coverage for their families is unfortunate. We attempted to sign Gearbox to a union agreement. They refused and disengaged from those talks. We look forward to hearing from any Gearbox performer who is interested in the many protections union agreements have to offer." Gearbox then responded to that.
This wasn't Randy, was it?
I don't think so, but it's still kind of conceded. "Troy is an exceptional talent, and we were disappointed that he declined to partner on Borderlands 3 after being offered the part. We wish him the best and hope he knows the offer to collaborate with him still stands. Gearbox is a Texas company and is bound by Texas law, which means that a person cannot be denied employment because of membership or non-membership in a labor union or other labor organization. As a talent-owned and talent-led organization, Gearbox enthusiastically works to ensure our pay and working conditions meet or exceed union standards. We also believe strongly in hiring local voice actors whenever we can, which is why we're thrilled Troy's career really took off after working with us.
What?
I didn't verify that.
That's
Troy Baker had roles before Tales from the Borderlands.
including Last of Us and BioShock Infinite. You know, Tales from the Borderlands was
Hold on.
2015.
Keep talking. I got IMDb to visit.
That's
There we go.
his career took off more, but not after working with them. His career took off before that. I assume that's probably why he was maybe sought after for Tales from the Borderlands.
I mean,
That quote reads a little bit like "we made you," which is not true. That's more the point.
Yeah, he was in Persona 4, which is
Okay.
not Gearbox. He was in a bunch of Japanese games. He was in Red Faction Guerrilla.
Was he Alec Mason?
He was. Yeah, I mean, he's in a lot of shit. I don't know exactly what the fuck they're talking about.
Oh, Saints Row.
Saints Row?
And that's before that, too.
I remember specifically it being a big deal that he was in Final Fantasy 13. He was a big part in that.
Okay. And that was well before.
Yeah. And finally, SAG-AFTRA again responds to Gearbox. Gearbox reference to Texas law is a non sequitur. SAG-AFTRA's contract does not require Gearbox to deny anyone employment based on their union status. In fact, SAG-AFTRA's contract does not require employers in any state to deny anyone employment based on union status.
They say that.
We are fully aware of the anti-labor right to work for less laws that help explain why Texas has more minimum wage workers than any state in the union. Employers in Texas and other right to work for less states nevertheless routinely work under SAG-AFTRA agreements with no legal obstacle at all. To the extent that Gearbox statement reflects legitimate ignorance, Gearbox could easily have asked that question during their discussions with SAG-AFTRA, which they did not. If indeed Gearbox meets or exceeds our contract standards in their treatment of performers, which we highly doubt, it would have cost them next to nothing to sign our union agreement and retain the original cast of their games. While SAG-AFTRA does not comment on member discipline matters, we observe that SAG-AFTRA members who work for certain non-union employers not only deprive themselves of benefits, they lower the standards for all their peers and facilitate abuse and exploitation of performers. And that is officially the end of our story for now.
Yes.
That's the same Gearbox that their CEO was accused of hoarding millions of dollars, right?
Lawsuit's done, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
He hoarded it, but it was legal, so
Yes.
who cares?
Just a little anecdote while I was Googling real quick. I don't know if you have something to sum this up. I just want to get angry real quick.
Get angry. I got something to sum it up, but get angry first.
The chief executive officer at Electronic Arts, Andrew Wilson, made $18 million in compensation last year. That was $1.192 million in salary. So that's almost $1,200,000 in salary, $17 million in stock
And this is the year that a bunch of their games have underperformed. They've bombed both critically and commercially.
$17 million in stock options.
Great.
Now, you can say what you want about the way the world works, as I argue with every bootstrap libertarian on fucking Facebook about, if I make my money, that means I could be a billionaire one day. Keep going, you fucking landscaper. You will beat the system. No, we're not enemies. We're friends. Here's the fucking deal.
That's
This
a good
guy
way
made
of putting it.
$17 million in stock options. With $17 million, he could pay, like, every single active SAG voice actor like another $3,000 a year, which is nothing to them. But I'm talking about every single one, not to mention just the ones that work for his company specifically.
Not to mention
It's absurd that he gets $17 million in stock options and privatized wealth, while these people have to scrape for $800 for their job.
And I guarantee that motherfucker's credited on Anthem.
Not to mention he could use that money to raise the salaries of the 10,000 workers around the world that EA is fucking.
Yes.
And like
No, shut another studio down.
At little studios like DICE and Respawn and
Now,
BioWare.
That is $17 million in stock options. That's not actually his pay. His pay is just a measly $1.192 million.
How will he survive?
Yeah. If he made $500,000 a year, which if you gave me that money, we would all be fucking we'd be recording this in a professional studio right now at my house. I mean, you go out there and eat sushi off of whatever kind of naked person you want to.
I don't like sushi.
And
I can't eat it.
You can
Fine.
eat vegan chicken
you can eat
nuggets
whatever
off whatever naked model you want.
And he makes almost $1,200,000 a year. It's just privatized wealth while your own personal product and company suffers is just unethical and unexcusable, and only justified by people who say, if you earn that much money, you should be able to earn it. Well, all right. Then I want to talk to him about what he did to earn all that money and why he's more important than the people who work fucking 900 hours a week to make sure Anthem gets made in time because they're forced to crunch because their fucking game has no direction or budget.
He was probably born into it, just like everyone. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit kind of on what I wanted to talk about, which is like...
No, but I agree.
First of all, this is obviously a battle of, like, the people who have the money versus the people who do the work. And
I'm not saying he doesn't work. He probably works. He probably fucking works long hours.
Yeah.
It just doesn't mean he's more important than the people who work the same amount.
We touched upon it earlier when I brought up, when you were talking about the sheer size of these developers and all the different departments and all the different people that do all these different jobs.
They were not wrong when they said that voice actors are probably less than 1% of the work that goes into a video game. There are a lot of people out there that work very hard to make even the video games that you go on Reddit and shit on, or the games like Last of Us where everybody praises it. Either way, there are people working very long hours to make those games, and they all deserve to have negotiations to be paid better, and those negotiations should go better than the negotiations we talked about today.
A lot of that work probably goes completely unnoticed, too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fucking A. It's like the classic fucking, why does my insulin cost $1 million but methadone is free? It's like, no. Stop talking about methadone. How about just ask why your insulin costs $1,000? You know what I mean? What does it have to do with that?
And like on a different, maybe lighter note, like they are actively fighting against the legitimization of their industry. You know, maybe these voice actors are less than 1% of the overall work that goes into a video game. But there's a reason why people look at film with more legitimacy or television with more legitimacy than they do video games, and that's because of the overall quality of the product and the work that the front-facing people kind of put into it.
Well, that's because video games cause violence in their toys.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously. But like... If you're going to sit there and be like, we want our game to have voice acting and we want the game designer or producer to be able to tell whatever story they want, but we don't want to pay these people and we don't want to tell them what role they're going to have so that they can give the best performance. It's like you are actively fighting against legitimizing your industry in the eyes of like the art community.
Yes. Yeah.
I wonder how much of it has to do with the fact that one union, even on the periphery of video games, could strengthen the fight of unions within video games proper.
Yeah.
I think it probably would be a...
I wonder how much of it has to do with that.
Yeah, because it's once... It's like once this group...
if you give it to SAG, now I gotta give... Now these guys can't crunch?
Yeah, exactly, because then it's the programmers, the artists, the engineers and sound.
I'm sure not all of it, but I'm sure part of it is absolutely that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why any union gets squashed, right?
Yeah.
Because if everybody unionizes, then companies have to pay people more, and then they're going to make less money.
No, you mean like 200 people are going to make less money.
Yeah.
But they have all the money to make
Forget everybody who's working in retail and service and
But then how are they going to get like fucking private jets in their backyard like
guess
John
what?
Travolta
They
has or
could
whatever?
still and also do all that.
Yeah, it's just
they just want the mountains because
but how many private jets could they buy in this new system?
No, they won't be happy until you have less. That's how it works.
Yeah, because if you have a bunch of...
It's not the fact that the seats in their helicopter aren't comfy enough.
Because they can have comfy seats in a helicopter at $1 million, probably.
Yeah.
They need $1 billion because you need to have less.
Yeah.
Because my pile big, and you get out of my big tree.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, let me do some plugs.
All right. Sorry, that was a good episode. Because I think this is one of those things that affects...
Welcome to Hop On Serious Hour.
I know.
Not a lot of jokes here.
This is one of those topics
I like this
that I think affects a lot more than people realize, because there are tons of people we know and people we don't know who've played a lot of the games we've talked about today, or games that were affected and may not have had any idea that this was a factor. So it's cool covering stuff like this.
Yeah. If I'm going to leave you with one thing at the end of this very serious episode, if you're out there playing video games, just know that pretty much everybody involved in making them is getting mistreated.
Yes. And worked really hard.
And worked really hard.
Yeah.
So try and be easier on them on the internet if you can.
Do what you can. If there's like a fucking petition you can sign, if there's some money you can donate, if there's some calls you can get behind, do it. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you're in charge of other people, treat them
at the very
well.
least, if you are out there and you play a game and you really enjoy it, maybe you enjoyed the writing in Outer Worlds, find the dude that wrote the Outer Worlds on Twitter.
Thank him.
And tell him that he did a great job. Find the programmers and the artists, if you can, and tell them that they did a great job.
Now, he won't be able to get paid anymore from...
He won't, but
he'll feel better.
I'm sure
it'll mean a lot to them.
I'm not a developer, so I don't know. I'm sure money would mean a lot more, but he's probably getting shit on by people who are telling him they don't like that the characters in his game are gay, so maybe like go out there and just tell him that you appreciated his work.
Or you could go on Reddit and bitch about something super specific.
Yeah.
Why can't I see Norman Reedus' penis?
Yeah.
You got the butt. What more do you want?
Penis.
Oh, yeah.
All right, anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you to everybody.
Yeah.
This is the first episode after our 50th.
Yeah, check out our
anniversary
episode.
Maybe don't.
It's all right.
It's fun. We had our
Maybe
sound
go
guy
back
on.
and listen to a bunch of them, and then if you listen to that and there are any updates, you can listen to our 50th episode. We did a bunch of recaps.
What I mean. There's a bunch of new information that we cover. There's corrections. I fucked up a lot of shit.
Typical.
I know. I think in the Mario Brothers movie one, I screwed up the director of Ghostbusters, and I said it was Harold Ramis and not Ivan Reitman. Yeah. Harold Ramis was just the star of the movie.
You had your chance to correct that last week.
I know, and I think I just
remember that is over.
You can hear more corrections like that.
Yeah.
And more updates.
Thanks to you guys for sitting through this real serious episode.
Yeah.
Thank you to our sound guy, Jason. We're going to be thanking him every episode.
Yeah.
I like to think we finally closed the book on the Borderlands stuff, which there are 2 episodes dedicated to that, and it came up last week.
Yep.
So,
But yeah, thank you for listening. If you want to hear more, you can go to our website, hotbuttoncast.com.
Yes.
There we have all of our episodes strewn throughout.
It's just random links. You just click whatever.
And if you want to know more on this topic, there are links that you have as well.
Yes, and the sources page, which is it up yet or coming?
It is. It looks dynamite.
Okay.
Yeah, he showed me.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
As we're recording this, the 50th episode actually hasn't been released yet, but the World of Warcraft one was. The sources are up for that, and we'll be going back through old episodes and trying to source them if we can. But going forward, I will have a sources page up for this when it
I've
is
said
launched.
it before, and I'll say it again. Thank God for the Wayback Machine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Christ.
You can also, there are also links on there to things like our YouTube channel, our Twitter,
Go
our
on YouTube
Instagram,
and watch our live show. It's great.
and our Facebook at Hot Button Cast. And yeah, I think that's everything we have. Thanks for listening.
Let's go get some pizza.
Yep.
Yeah.